Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're live now. I'm Bobby Ross, editor of the Christian Chronicle. We're here with most of our editorial board this afternoon. Eric Trigestad, the other member of our boards at Freed-Hardeman at their lectureship this afternoon, so I don't think he's going to make it. We've got Audrey Jackson, who's our associate editor. We've got Cheryl Mann-Bacon, who's a correspondent and a member of our editorial board. We've got Jeremy Beller, who's our opinions editor, who handles reading editorials and reviews. We've got Trendy Mitchell, another of our editorial board members. And then we've got John Edmerson with his wife, Felicia. And I'll let John kind of give us a real quick intro to kind of why we're here this afternoon, and let the others introduce themselves. And then I think we've got a sponsor message that we'll play after that, and then we'll get into some questions and more discussions about the topic of the day.
All right, so I'm John Edmerson. I'm happy to be here today. I'm a proud member of the editorial board, and I wrote a piece for this particular issue that should be at your homes, if not close to being at your homes, on the value of Christian education. When Cheryl and the board were talking about OVU, that's one of the things that we talked about. And I mentioned that all of our kids they've had time in Christian institutions, 4 of the 5 schools affiliated with the Churches of Christ. So we found that to be a little interesting and just kind of piqued our interest, and was asked to write a piece. And so here we are today. I'm here with my lovely wife, Felicia. We've been married 28 years this December, and then we'll move to our children, allow them to introduce themselves. Starting with our oldest.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Now we can.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. Hi, I'm Exodus Edmerson. I actually live in Portland, Oregon. I'm a member of the Vineyard Church of Christ, so in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a project manager at one of the large universities. So very, very nice to be on the call today. Thank you for having me.
There we go. And I'm Jules Edmerson. I'm the second oldest of the crew. I went to Harding University from 2014 to 2017. And currently I stay in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a member of the Church of Christ at the Vineyard.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dream Edmerson. I'm the middle child. I also went to Harding with Jules and then Lee. I also worship at the Vineyard Church of Christ, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Lee Edmerson. I'm number 4, or the baby girl, or the boss of the family, as I like to call myself. I've just graduated from Harding this past December, and I'm still in Searcy, just chilling right now. And it's nice to see you all.
My name is Joab, and I'm a freshman at Oklahoma Christian, and I'm studying to be in finance right now.
Awesome.
All right, Bobby, that's everybody.
Well, that's great. Well, thank y'all so much for being here. I'm looking forward to talking about Christian education. Looking forward to hopefully you guys maybe having some thoughts on what your dad wrote. But before we get to that, let's play the message from our sponsor.
A place that nurtures, encourages, and strengthens you. Most people call that home. We call it Harding University. Here, you will be challenged to grow spiritually, intellectually, and academically in an environment that inspires you to find your meaning and purpose. Our campus life fosters a community of people who will become lifelong friends. Come see for yourself what Harding is about. Pursue your meaning and purpose here with us at Harding University.
Is he ready to transition downstairs? Okay.
Hey, Audrey, one of the last people in that video looked familiar. What?
That was me and Naaman Pope when we graduated in May.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's what happens when you're friends with the media team at a university.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, we got a lot of Harding representation, but Oklahoma Christian grad here, 1990. Glad to see Joab kind of diversifying it a little bit for the Edmersons. John, why don't you maybe start out and tell us a little bit about your editorial and kind of what message you were trying to get across there?
Sure. We firmly believe in the framework of the restoration movement. There's nothing more important to our family than our spirituality, our values. And we pretty early on, Felicia and I talked about how to best achieve that with this next generation. And we thought, of course, the first place for learning is our home. We tried to frame things in a way that would uphold those values. I'm also a minister, been an elder, and we thought, of course, the church would do its part, and it has. But as our children began to transition into young adulthood, we thought it good to at least steer them toward an educational place that, again, would reinforce these values. And so that's kind of how we came to the conclusion of sending them to schools affiliated with the restoration movement. You might see that 4 of the 5 went to Church of Christ affiliated schools. Exodus actually went to Thomas More, which at the time was really close to where we lived. And I wanted her at least a little bit to talk about that decision and why she went to Thomas More versus going to one of our schools. And I'll kind of begin the conversation with Exodus graduated high school at 16. And so I was very, 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 very nervous about sending her away, but she can talk a little bit about that. So Exodus?
Yes, well, first of all, I would have been fine had I gone to a Church of Christ school, but I wanted to, my dad was so nervous, so I was like, I'll just go ahead and stay close to the house. I stayed at our church at Kennedy Heights Church of Christ at the time. So it was a good fit. I was so young, just starting out. But I really did need that weekly reinforcement. And it was good to have, those relationships that I had built over the years, just continuing with those relationships in college, as I'm getting into adulthood. So I thought it was, really, really helpful for me in my growth and development for that reinforcement of consistency of what I was learning and experiencing as I was growing up.
Mm-hmm. So the rule was either you had to go to a Church of Christ school, which they knew all of them, Pepperdine, Fee is a graduate of Pepperdine, Southwestern, Freed Hardeman, Lipscomb, Abilene, Oklahoma Christian, any of those schools, or you could go anywhere in the country, but you had to be in close proximity to a Church of Christ. And so that's the rule that we've had for all 5 of our children, and it seems to have worked out fine. So, and they visited a lot of good schools, Baylor and Vanderbilt, several schools, but most of them landed there with Church of Christ schools. So, Joab, I know you've got to transition out of here pretty quickly. How do you feel about the decision to attend Oklahoma Christian, and what's that experience been like for you?
Oklahoma Christian has been fun because you kind of meet people with like the same background, and like they like to do the same things as you, and it's just really fun because you kind of click with people. You just find your click. So I can say it's just been really, I've learned a lot from my short time here already. Mm-hmm. So it's been very fun.
Good. So you're not mad at me for you going to Oklahoma Christian, right?
I'll say, well, since I'm on the record, I won't get into all that, but this isn't the worst place I could have been.
Right. And with finance and with your future, did you look at coming to Oklahoma Christian as being a step back, or were you kind of, and are you kind of in your program seeing the future as it's unfolding in your field?
So actually, I don't start my business classes until maybe like my junior or sophomore year. But when we visited, we had we already had checked out the business program, and I went to the business boot camp during the summer. And so it seems they have a really nice program, and they've been ranked. So I think it's a good fit, and I think they'll help me learn a lot.
Good. And you won some kind of a contest. What was all that about?
Oh, you just got first place from out of all the groups at business boot camp.
And
so we had to
that
pitch
was
an
first
idea,
place. Go ahead.
kind of like Shark Tank. It's kind of like Shark Tank.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Mhm.
good. All right, good. So you know, as a parent, when you make these kinds of decisions and you have these kinds of rules, you know, you try hard to explain the why. You know, when you have adult children, it's not just, you know, we'll do this. You know, you want to explain the why so that they'll have a good understanding, knowing that, you know, within 5 to 10 years of their being in college, they have their own children. So I've wanted them all to you know, to experience that. Jareem, I know that you're going to have to tip off as well. Would you consider your time at Harding invaluable, and are you glad you went?
I would say for sure, it was just an experience of a lifetime. I actually went there because of Jules. That was part of the reason. Me and Jules were very close in high school. And when he left, I was very sad. So that was part of it. And then when you visit Harding, Bruce McClarty was the president at the time, but he just made it seem like you can't be anywhere else. You can't go to any other school. Like, this is where you belong. And that's how I felt. But yeah, just the people I met there. Everyone knows that I'm a part of a friend group called the Rat Pack. And we all just click. There's 5 of us. And we all had very similar upbringings as well. And our parents, come to find out, are all connected somehow. So I don't think that would have happened anywhere else. And yeah, it's great.
John, can I say something real quick?
Please, help yourself.
I was just going to tell Joab that the Christian Chronicle, we're here on the Oklahoma Christian campus. So Jeremy, Audrey, and I would love to take you to lunch sometime and hear the off-the-record story as well. So just keep that in mind. We're here kind of over by Jimmy John. So just swing by and we'll take you to lunch and you can tell us the true story sometime.
Good. Now, Jules took issue, I think, with some of what I said in the article. I think he wanted me maybe to go a slightly different way, or maybe bring out some other points that he thought I missed. So, Jules, would you like to add maybe that perspective to our conversation?
Sure. And I'm glad I reread the article just before this. So when I was one of the first people to read the draft of it, and so the direction was more so, which, I mean, he ended up going with the article, but it was kind of, you know, we did this from our family. And I wanted the article to go to like more so 10 reasons why your child should go to a Christian education. So I think clearly you can kind of connect the dots, but more giving more practical explanation and how were we affected by going to Christian schools. That's the direction I wanted to go with. I still think the article turned out well, but I think it's kind of hard for people to know. Really, after you graduate, you'll kind of see how a Christian education, how that really kind of grounds you and that foundation that's been built. So you're not really going to see it at Harding. You'll have friends that you'll connect with. You'll have people that same upbringing, but it's kind of once you leave and you get out into the world and you have to learn how to swim by yourself, that's when all the knowledge, all the values, and all that has to come out. And I think that's the invaluable lesson that Harding has done, and my family has done as well.
Mhm. Would you say that your training in your Bible classes, would you say that that's helped the local church where you serve? As a matter of fact, if I recognize that background, you're at the church right now, right?
Right. So we, well, so part of it, telling the story, is our grandfather, my granddad is Papa. He's a minister, and then they were professors at Cincinnati Christian University. And so I have memories of going up there. And then, of course, my father, he's a minister. And so the habit of going to church and working for church is like extremely strong for me. So it's to the point to where if I'm not at church on Sunday, or if I'm not doing something for the church, I almost feel wrong. And this is just instinct at this point. So this isn't not really understanding my relationship with God. And so once I actually got the Harding, where you have the choice of, you only have 15 chapel skips during the semester. So when you have a choice of going to chapel or serving with your local congregation, and I was out there, and at the beginning, it took me a while to find a place where I felt welcome, where I felt like I belonged. But after going there, I felt wrong not doing anything. And so that's just going with just my upbringing. And then my friends were the same way. They were active in the congregation. So it's hard to get up there and sing a song, and hard to get up there and come up with a lesson, hard to teach a Bible class when you necessarily, no one can force you to. But when you're at a university and your friends are doing it, you have professors that do it, it makes it all the more easier to do it. And it's almost like an expectation. Rather, if you go someplace else, it's really easy just to fall into the background.
Do you think you're a better Bible teacher at a local level? You know, kind of looking at what you bring to a class. Would you say that your Christian education played a part in preparing you to be a teacher and to be a leader at the local church level?
Right. So definitely Harding. And it's I'll say it's hurt, because with Harding, I think we all are familiar with just at our local congregation Bible classes. But when you have professors that have doctorates in Bible, and this is what they study the Bible full time, it brings a completely different aspect of the Bible. And it's not somewhat something that you can just read and you can get the message from. But when you're going through the apologetics, the hermeneutics, and the Greek, and you're starting to look at how that all affects the Bible study, and you can really start to understand it a lot better through that. And so, being a preacher's kid, you got some of that, but actually going to a university where you're required to go to Bible classes and be around people who have Christian education, formal training, and they've done it for a while, and it's clear that they know what they're talking about with the Bible. It's kind of like just the normal Bible classes, almost they're not going to feed you as much, just because you've been at a university where you're just constantly stimulated by people who are some of the leading thinkers in our fellowship, and they just know the Bible. So I definitely think that's helped, but really just the exposure, seeing it, hearing them talk about the Bible, hearing them their own views, because most of it, some of the teachers are the same way, but then kind of everyone's different philosophy on the Bible. So it's kind of like you had a fusion, and they all could back up and give sound evidence, especially at Harding University. But I would definitely say just teaching and the exposure to different things.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I actually want to come back to some of that. Now, Lee, you're the most recent graduate of the five, and you cost me the most with graduation. Let me just get that out of the way. So, would you say that your decision, looking back on the last 4 years, would you say that your decision to go to Harding was a decision that you'd make again? You've made friendships, or how would you, any buyer's remorse, or, how do you feel about that decision?
Well, with just me being me and being so like academically focused, with everything I do. I'm not so sure if I would choose Harding again. I kind of, you know, looking back over my 4 years here, it's been a long 4 years. It's been a long 4 years. So I'm not so sure if I'd choose it again, but, I can't go back and change time. So, I take the good with the bad. So these 4 years, I appreciate the people that I've met and the relationships that I've formed, and some of the teachers that I have. And I still work here now with the McNair office, which is like amazing that I get to do that. But looking back, it was really hard. And I think I've definitely learned a lot about myself and about what I'm willing to accept and not accept. So if I was a quitter, I'd probably left a long time ago. But since my parents are so into what you start, you finish, I finished. So I'm proud to say that I got through it.
Yeah, so I don't want to paint the picture like this hasn't been hard. It's been very hard. All of our children have had challenges within this heightened racial and political climate. It's been extremely difficult. But I've been particularly impressed and particularly appreciative to watch Lee in her growth and her development. And I've seen her blossom into this young woman who's really, really committed academically to her future. So though things haven't been perfect, I even think that's a lesson. Bobby and Jeremy, Cheryl, Audrey, Trendy, all of us can tell you life is not perfect. The church isn't perfect. Your job isn't perfect, but yet God is still calling you, to be who he's called you to be in an imperfect setting. Of the five, Lee lived off campus the longest. I was so nervous about her living off campus. And, she's done extremely well. She's had a group of young ladies with her over the last couple of years. Looks like Addie has been with her the longest. And we just appreciate even the kinship with Addie's family. Now, I'll actually turn it back over to you, Bobby, in just a moment, but I wanted to give Felicia an opportunity to say a little something about this whole process. When Bobby and I were texting earlier, I told him that Felicia really was the one that academically prepared the kids. All I did was just smile and be nice to everybody. so she's the one that started them from birth with routines and homeschool and home training. So let me just let her say a little bit, and then once she's done, Bobby, feel free to kind of take things back.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would have made it any school they chose, but again, our focus was to make sure that they had that their foundation was strong and it was built upon. They could add to that. So that was invaluable, that they learned the doctrine. The doctrine was reinforced. So that was, the one church that was key for me. They gotta understand that there's only one church. So, and I believe that they all got that where they attended. Exodus, she went to Thomas More, which was actually a Catholic university, but she still followed the rules. She was close to a strong Church of Christ school.
A strong Church of Christ.
I'm sorry, a strong Church of Christ congregation.
Yeah, I remember when Exodus went to school that first day. Exodus, I know you remember me crying that whole day, don't you?
So if anything, Exodus got to see I think Exodus faith was reinforced. The doctrine was reinforced by her attending that Catholic, because she could see just like some things just don't add up, with what they profess. So that was good that she could find those contrasts and solidify what she believed. So I'm just glad to see that all five of them, they've done so much better than I've done. So that was important too, that they have to do better than mommy, and they have done that. So I'm grateful for that.
Now, Fee is a graduate of Pepperdine, and she went to school there. Her former minister, her late minister, Thamar Williams, was a huge part of her life, her family, just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful family, all prepared her. And then we worked to prepare our children. So it's been a process, but we've appreciated at least having a moment to talk about the experiences. And if you'd like to ask us anything specifically, please feel free to. All right, Bobby.
Oh, well, thank you, John and Felicia and all of Edmerson children. I think I've got one question just kind of in my mind, and then I want to kind of open it up wider because I don't know that Cheryl and Jeremy have ever been this quiet for so long. So we need to get them involved. But John, I know some people may be looking at this and saying, how in the world, John and Felicia both, I'll ask you this, do you afford to send 5 children to private education? I mean, 4 Church of Christ schools and a Catholic school. How in the world do you do that?
Right. Well, I have a lot of debt. so that's part of it. And that plays a part moving forward with, our home purchasing. And we've owned a couple of houses. We're in the hunt now to maybe do something in the near future. But that's a decision you make. And if we had an opportunity to do it again, we would not hesitate. We felt like the money that we'd spent would be money well spent. And we're grateful that all of our children got really good scholarship packages. Joab, who is, it's the baby, he got a 75% scholarship. He was actually what they call a John Henry Thompson Scholar. And John Henry Thompson was the late John Henry Thompson was a professor at Oklahoma Christian University. And I had to remind Gary Jones, who we talked with, that my dad baptized John Henry Thompson when he was a teenager. So Joab, he's gotten the best package out of all of them. And we're so grateful. But all of them have gotten scholarships for, grades and things like that. So between work, study, working, scholarships, Felicia and myself and our jobs and loans, we found a way to make it work. But we have some debt for sure.
Well, that's great. And I've got all 3 of my children graduated Christian universities, 2 from here at Oklahoma Christian, 1 from Pepperdine where Felicia went. And, a combination of scholarships,
right,
working, I do know they have some loan debt, but I think you're right though. I mean, that sounds like what you're saying is if it's something you want to make happen, it's something that people
Correct.
can make it happen in most cases. Trendy, Cheryl, Jeremy, Audrey, do y'all have questions? Audrey, I know you're we just hired Audrey with, she's a spring graduate of Harding, so she may have some insight as well as far as what's going on, but I will shut up and let a few other people talk.
Yes, this is Trendy, and you Edmerson kids are just absolutely awesome. You all,
Thank you, Trendy.
Y'all are awesome, and I give all the credit to your lovely wife, Felicia. So,
did we lose Felicia's Brady Bunch thing?
What?
I'm not seeing Trendy's face, but go ahead. I guess we're hearing her voice.
yes, I don't have my camera on, but
Oh, okay.
I have my profile picture up, I believe. But anyway, yes.
Oh, there you are. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, I was just, I think it's just absolutely wonderful to continue on to college with that solid Christian foundation. I really am just commending you all for going further with your education at, a Church of Christ affiliated college. I guess my question is, and I'm the loner of the group because I went to a secular school. I went to the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I had an excellent church home at Woodland Park Church of Christ. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question is, do you think that you are, I guess, what am I trying to say, hindered, or do you feel like you're in a bubble when you are constantly surrounded by everyone who is so like-minded at Harding and Oklahoma Christian and Pepperdine and Southwestern? Or do you feel like that once you graduate, do you feel like, is it a shocker, coming out and you're having to deal with other people who are not Christians?
Right.
So I guess that for me, just an outsider perspective, that was just one question I had for you all.
Well, I'll say that everybody who went to Southwestern weren't Christians. So I felt like I had a lot of exposure to people who were at Southwestern. For example, the bulk of our athletic teams that played basketball, that ran track, we had one of the best track programs in the country. Almost every year, some of our track runners would go to the Olympics to audition to be a sprinter with that. So I didn't feel myself that I was being educated in a bubble, so to speak, but I did not want, I think, at 18 to be in a situation where the setting would be interpreted as being hostile. That would come later in graduate school. But as an undergraduate school, I actually appreciated at least having the Christian environment at my fingertips. Now, not everybody that goes to Christian institutions are, where they need to be, nor was I. I mean, I was striving, but I really think it was an asset. And I had people around me and I was around others, and we kind of just helped each other through it. I saw some things that I really hadn't seen, but we survived. So I don't know how all the rest of you feel, but that's kind of where I am with it.
I can go next. So they actually call Harding University like the Harding bubble while you're there. And it's definitely a bubble feel while you're there, just because you're Searcy, so you're about 45 minutes away from Little Rock. And at the time, Searcy was a very small city, so there's not going to be anything for you to really do. So you have to rely on your relationships with your friends for entertainment or going up to the gym, but pretty much all your activity is going to be done at Harding's campus. And at first, it was a little uncomfortable because you have a Bible class you're required to go to. You have chapel you're going to. If you decide to go to your local congregation on Sundays, you can do that, and then Bible class on Wednesday. So literally almost every single day, you're doing something. And so the question I would more so ask is, why am I feeling suffocated when I should be giving this amount of time to Christ and my walk and having devoted time to study and go to Bible study? I think that's more the university and that bubble kind of reflects more of how our lives should actually look, and with the amount of time you should actually spend with your faith, rather than leaving a university to where you're only going to church Sunday and maybe Wednesday. I don't think too much of us go to Sunday evening church anymore. So at the time, I didn't really understand, and it was annoying. But of course, once your habits are reinforced and you kind of see, okay, this is how this helped me after I graduated Harding, I can definitely say I appreciate it now. And it's just like the saying, no pain, no gain. So there's going to be some being uncomfortable, being tired of going to Bible class, being tired of going to chapel. And I remember one of the things Dr. Bruce McClarty had told us is how everyone tells them that they miss chapel once that they leave Harding University. And
do you?
I do. So at the time I was like, there is no way I'm going to miss chapel. But it's just because learning the songs, that's different from the songs we sing at church, the styles and everything. So I didn't think I would be one of those people to say I would actually miss chapel. But waking up in the morning, going to class, and then going to chapel to where you're singing, you have your scripture and a little message that really does help ground you, and you kind of miss it once you don't have it anymore.
Mhm. Very good. Very good.
Trinity,
Anybody?
since Bobby said Jeremy and I were seldom this quiet, I'll let Jeremy live in that bubble just a little bit longer. But
tell them where you're coming from today, Cheryl, so you can get in a plug.
I am retired after 39 years at Abilene Christian University. 30 of those years were spent on the faculty in journalism and mass communication. And I have two kids who both graduated from ACU. My son also finished his master's degree there. He married another ACU grad, and my daughter married a graduate of Hardin-Simmons University across town.
Wonderful.
So I have a faculty perspective as well as a parent perspective. And with regard to that bubble, I think the thing that I would want to say to the parents who are out there and to the kids who are trying to make this decision and who have concerns about that, am I isolating myself from the world as opposed to learning how to live in the world, but not of the world? That one of the questions that they need to ask when they go to do campus visits is, so what kind of internships am I going to be expected to be a part of? What are the opportunities for service in the community that are going to take me off the campus? Because I do think that that's really important. And I do think each of our colleges and universities are in different kinds of communities. Abilene's quite a bit bigger than Searcy, but it's definitely not Dallas Fort Worth. I mean, you know, I always tell people it's in the middle of nowhere. But it's a city of about 125,000. There's 3 colleges here, and Tech has quite a few graduate programs here. And it is important, while our students have the opportunity to take advantage of everything that a Christian higher education offers in terms of getting that academic training from people who have a Christian worldview. I do think that it's really important for them and for parents to seek opportunities to begin stepping out into the world and to begin challenging themselves. And that's an important question for them to ask as they do those campus visits. The other thing I would say is that wherever they go, they can find whatever they want to find. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they want to go to a church affiliated university and live an experience that is steeped in spiritual opportunity on a daily basis, that opportunity is there and they can find that. But it's also true that if they want to go to a Christian university and find people who will party all night long, 7 days a week, they can find that. It's there too. And so an awful lot of the responsibility for the experience falls on the student as much as it does fall on the institution.
Mm-hmm. Let me say before we are done that I don't want to underestimate the cultural and ethnic challenges. I've been a minister at predominantly African-American congregations my whole life, and our children have come up in 2 cultures. In that particular culture and where we've lived, it's been predominantly Caucasian and other ethnic groups. So they kind of have this dual way of looking at the world. When they entered college, I encouraged them to look around. I had some anxiety about them going away. Part of that, I think, is because of my own experiences in higher education and working with professors and administrators, you know, who have different opinions, who share different views, who maybe weren't as kind as they should have been. So I don't want anyone to think that our children going to a school that's affiliated with the Churches of Christ means that, you know, it's just going to be a perfect scenario. You know, people need to grow everywhere. But what we thought was, in the long run, though there have been some bumps and bruises, that they would ultimately come out being stronger and more mature and be in a position where one day they can be in a place to where they can help some other young person who's trying to come through. So, but I'm grateful. And I remember clearly Jules going away. Jules started the Black Student Association there at Harding. I know they had a lot of anxiety about that. That was new at the time. They really didn't know Jules. Jules really didn't know them. But that organization is still around today. And then, of course, Doreen, she's a little more milder of the five, but she's had her experiences. Lee certainly has had some challenges. And Joab, for the most part, has always been able to get along with everybody. So, our prayer is that our children in general, as we entrust them to God and then to the administrators and faculty, that we just have faith that people are going to do the right thing and that they're going to be okay. And that's proven to be true. So to Harding and to Oklahoma Christian, to Southwestern and to Pepperdine and other higher institutions, we appreciate you and we value you and we look forward to your continued growth and our continued support.
Thank you so much for answering that, because that was going to be my next question. Just the atmosphere you all are in, being young Black men and young Black women, and just wondering how are you all embraced, especially right now during this time. So
excuse me, I actually have to head out right now for my next class. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
So thank you for having me, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye, Joab.
Bye, babe.
Bye.
So I could speak on that question first, and I think Lee will have a good answer behind me. So when I went to school, it was literally the Obama era going into Trump era. And so that's coming from, and I'm from the north, Cincinnati, Ohio, so going to the south. And so it was definitely a culture shock being down there. And there's not a lot of people of color, period, but especially Black people. So the ones that you do meet, you kind of, you'll spend more time with them just because they have similar upbringings to you. And so one of the things that was down there is that we needed something for us to kind of, get together, for us to do something where we can know all the other students. And I remember like the process of my friends and I starting that group and talking, getting our faculty sponsors, and going to meet with the president and the vice president at the time. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about more, because of course the church at this point, it does reflect society, and there are differences among us, and there still is racism in the church, but that doesn't define my time at Harding University. So I definitely had my run-ins with just racism, but then I can turn around on the same hand and say I've met some of the nicest people, some of the nicest, the Southern hospitality, to where I'm meeting people for the first time and they're inviting me over to their house dinner. So it's definitely something. And I think going to a whites growing up, because we grew up in a white area, that definitely helped prepare us. So I'm not ignorant to the fact that it probably was a lot easier for us just because we've already used to dealing with it. But then if I was someone who grew up where this was a complete opposite, I'm not sure how I would have reacted or how I would have been sort of embraced. And then if Lee's still on the call, I think she would kind of have an interesting perspective on that too.
Oh yeah, just being Black and going to a PWI, as I refer to them, it's been like an interesting experience, just because you're probably not expecting it so much, because you're all Christians, so you think that everybody would respect you and treat you fairly, but that hasn't always been the case. And then what I struggle with is the response of just pray for people, or they just need prayer, they just had a bad day. And I struggle with giving excuses to blatant acts of disrespect, but it's been real difficult for me. Like my first semester started off rough. I think I cried like every single day or close to it, but I had my sister there, so that definitely helped. And like just having the support of my parents and knowing that I wasn't alone and that they had my back in whatever I wanted to do or whatever I was going, that was really great. And but just like having that support isn't always as common. So um, there's definitely a sense of it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary being Black in a school where that's not the norm, like that's not as talked about. It's uncomfortable for some people, even though, you know, race impacts every facet of life. So for some, it's still uncomfortable. But just my time overall, Harding. I'm aware that the field that I want to go into, the majority of the people don't look like me. So it was like something that I have to get used to now. So I'm kind of glad that I've built up a tolerance for what I'll accept and what I won't accept, and my ability to confront people who I felt have disrespected not only me as a person, but my race or made that uncomfortable for me. So it's been a learning experience, but like everybody said, it's easier that we've come from Ohio, but I also went to school in California. So I've had a mixture of more ethnically diverse or white teachers, and like coming to a school where most of the teachers are white. That's also something that I think played a role in my my path here. It was interesting, like I I loved how nice everybody is. Everybody's really nice for the most part, but like there are a couple people who claim they're Christians, but they don't always act like it. And so it's been difficult kind of navigating my response to certain actions of adults, especially because I feel like as you get older, you're supposed to know better. But it's always a learning curve, so you have to be able to look back and say like, what can I learn from this, and how can I better respond to these sort of acts and insensitivity. And what was so great about both my siblings going here is that they built relationships. So I kind of walked in having these relationships and knowing people like Dr. Westbrook at Harding. He's amazing. He's super informed, and it's just been amazing to have a white professor that is so willing to have these tough conversations, and he's not afraid to be uncomfortable and shy away. And that's why I chose him to be my advisor for my McNair research project. And just I wish that everybody had that response, which, you know, just making yourself uncomfortable so that you can eventually all make everybody comfortable. But just like I said, I mean, it's difficult going into a space where nobody else looks like you, especially in the science classes. There's like, you can count on one hand, maybe two fingers, how many Black kids there are. And by the end of the semester, it's on no finger. There's nobody left. So, you know, that's been a challenge in and of itself. But, you know, that perseverance and that resilience that my parents instilled early on of not quitting, and you got to do what you got to do. You got to get it done regardless of what everybody else says. You know, that's definitely helped. So I'm appreciative of being Black and being able to learn this while I'm here and young.
I think Jules wants to say something else, but can I ask you real quickly? You mentioned two things that what does PWI stand for? And also, what field are you going into?
Sure. PWI is a predominantly white institution. Okay. And the field that I'm going into, I want to be a dentist. So I've been I have a pre-med minor on my degree. I don't know how. The science classes are no joke. They're no joke, but I made it. And if I can make it, anybody can make it. So
cool. Jules, I think you were raising your hand?
Yes. So I think you can tell Lee, I think Dream and mine experiences were similar, but Lee has a very different experience. And Dr. Westbrook, he's a Bible professor, but he was actually and he is a white man, but he was one of the sponsors for the Black Student Association, because I remember sitting in his class my freshman or sophomore year, and he had said something about racism in the Bible that just caught my ear. And then after further talking with him, there's just this certain level of trust that was established. So I trust him and he trusts me. And then even we were talking about just like starting the Black Student Association, he was instrumental in encouraging us, telling us who we need to talk to when issues would happen on campus. We would go to him and he would help resolve those. So he's done a lot, but then I'm glad to hear him say that even when I wasn't there, he still was great friends with my sister. So it's a lot, but I think we have a lot of connections to Harding University because of the people that we know growing up in the Church of Christ. Our dad's a preacher, and then I was the first one, and then my siblings went there, so it wasn't starting over. But I just think the question needs to be asked: if you don't have all those connections, do you think you could last at Harding? And that's or any PWI Christian university. But I think the question Ms. Mitchell asked earlier, that is something that needs to be kind of addressed for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your insight. I really appreciate that.
Jeremy, Audrey, you guys, we at least need to hear you once. We got about 10 minutes left, I think.
Well, I'm happy to see who the recipient of the John Thompson Scholarship is. John, as you and I have talked about before, John Thompson was an elder here at Wilshire when I came here, and he served as an elder up to the time of his death. His wife and kids still worship here. So that's exciting to me to see who has that scholarship right now. One of the things, and Trinity mentioned this, that I was thinking about, the typical accusation against Christian education is this bubble mentality. And I'm curious to hear your perspective in that our Christian institutions aren't just echo chambers. While parents do want to see this Christian worldview strengthened, you don't just go there and just hear the same. You do get challenged, do you not?
Oh yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit on how, even from your background, even from a restoration background, that you were challenged to kind of kick the tires of your own faith?
Mm-hmm. And even when you say bubble, when I think of bubble, I think of just having that, being able to have that environment where it's going to help circle our children's heart, circle our heart. So that nurturing. So we need that bubble in order for us, so that we can go out and then get our bruises and bumps. But we have to have some place to come on. We have to have a safe haven to regroup. So from that regrouping, then go back out and get some more licks. But yeah, you have to have that bubble. That's key.
Yeah. I discovered, I think, when I went to Pepperdine, my eyes were open with regard to the restoration movement and some of our practices. And I can say that it was a transition of sorts. I think I'd come up in a pretty absolute environment. It's black and white. There are no gray areas. But now to know that not only are there gray areas, but God may have created some gray areas where we can struggle with each other and learn what it's like, to love and have different views. So for me, I wanted the kids to go to that setting where they would be challenged with their beliefs, with their values, what's important. So I don't know if any of them want to speak to it, but I certainly was challenged and I've come through it. So I would not say that everything that I heard was just simply an amen to everything my dad, mom taught me. I definitely heard some differing kinds of views. So I don't know if Jules, Exodus, or Lee, you guys want to speak to that.
Oh, I just want to say one quick thing. The bubble's nice just because, with everybody being so social, it's like, what are you doing on Tuesday? I'm going to Devo. What are you doing on Wednesday? I'm going to Bible study. What are you doing on Thursday? I'm going to a home Devo. And it's not weird that you're doing it. it's like it's just the norm, like that's what you're doing. So I think, that's also just building some confidence and finding what you want to do and what you are wanting to be a part of. That's always great, and I think that's a bonus of the bubble.
Yeah, so I'm also a fan of the bubble too. It was like my high school. We had a small tight knit community, so that's very familiar to me. And then back to the question that Mr. Jeremy just answered. It's I don't. It's challenging, but I still think like Harding could be more diverse in some of their views, definitely. But I think kind of the biggest thing, and some of the answers, there's going to be gray areas. We weren't there when a lot of this things were, I know we weren't there when a lot of the things happened in the Bible. And the best thing that we can do is just study the Bible and find God's intended purpose. So I don't think a lot of the stuff we're actually going to know. And it's not, I can't say my way is better than your way, or better. We just have to search the scriptures daily. But I definitely think in your formative years, from graduating high school to being young adults, I think the bubble kind of insulates and protects you. So it's almost like going to a training gym, because you're going to be bombarded once. You're going to have plenty of time in the world. But I definitely think you need to learn how to defend your faith, find out why you're a Christian. Do you actually believe what you've been taught all these years? Try to prove it wrong. And I think once you can kind of answer those questions and have a safe place to where you can discover, you can look at different religions, you can question all those things, and people actually have an answer for you, so you can kind of prove your faith. And once you're able to leave and go out into the world, kind of all that everything that's gone into you at that point will be tested, and you'll see if your faith is actually genuine, or is it just a product of the bubble. So I enjoyed the bubble. So I'm not the bubble at all, but I definitely think there's some of that which is good, but you can definitely learn a lot and strengthen your spiritual muscles down at Harding University, preparing you for the world.
All right. I would also like to add something. Just talking about another good reason you should send your kids to Harding or a Christian university. I know, especially for us, we grew up having to go to church. So it was fun for us, but that was the requirement. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, you were supposed to be at church. But when you go off on your own, you're kind of having to do that yourself, and nobody's on you. You're not going to get in trouble if you don't get up for church on Sunday. You're also figuring out, is this how I want to live my life? And so I would say there's no better place than a place where people have degrees and the knowledge to defend the faith. So like, we all have a lot of questions about the Bible and why did this happen, or why do we do this? And at Harding, personally, a lot of people were able to answer those questions.
My experience, I love that answer, both as someone who went through Christian University, and I attended a secular university for graduate degrees. And I've always kind of thought of it as, for undergraduate work, it's kind of like doing academics with a safety net under you, so that you can be asked those questions, you can be kind of challenged, but you know that the person asking those questions has a deep fundamental belief in Jesus, in scripture, and it's a safe place to kind of land. But when you hit graduate school, in most state universities or other institutions, they take the net away.
Right.
And you walk into that classroom and there is, John, that antagonism towards the Christian faith. And I was really grateful that I had seen people who had gone through top-notch academic universities and walked out with their faith intact. That gave me faith that when I was sitting in that classroom across from an antagonist, that I could stand on my feet, that I didn't have to be ashamed of the faith that I held deeply. I could still gain knowledge from those situations and learn to compete on the academic level. But I didn't have to be ashamed of my faith because I'd seen wonderful people there at Oklahoma Christian who had done that as well.
Well, I think we're just real close to running out of time. Audrey, I'm going to ask you real quick. You're a Harding graduate. You've listened to a lot of discussion. Were the things you've heard, were they familiar to you, or were they, being a white student at Harding, were some of what the Edmersons have talked about, was that new to you? I'm just curious about that, and we'll make this pretty quick because I know we've already gone an hour.
It wasn't anything I'm too unfamiliar with. Of course, I graduated 2021, and so I was there during 2020 and 2021. And Naaman Pope, who I was standing with in the ad that opened our panel, we were taking a picture at graduation. He was actually the Black Student Association president during 2020, and so he and I had a lot of very similar conversations about diversity and diverse faculty and student body. And so those were things that weren't too unfamiliar. And those are conversations that I was a part of that were happening on campus while I was there.
Okay. Well, John and Felicia, I'm so impressed with your children. You guys obviously have done a terrific job and have so much to be proud of. Appreciate all of you guys joining us. It's been great. Anything else before we sign off?
I have to make a pitch.
Okay. Go for it, Cheryl.
To all these graduates of Christian universities, and especially to Lee, I know you want to be a dentist, but if you're part of McNair, that means you also understand the value of graduate study. The hardest task I faced as a department chair for 20 plus years was hiring faculty. And the hardest part of that was seeking diverse faculty applicants. It was the most difficult challenge of all. And so I just want to say, you have had the blessing of that Christian University experience, and you know how much better it might have been if you had been in an institution with a more diverse faculty. So don't set aside the possibility that you might be part of the answer to that solution in whatever field that you're in. And, consider graduate study and consider going back to a Christian institution and being a part of the faculty that's trying to make a difference in the lives of the students there. Because I started recruiting faculty when smart 18-year-olds showed up in my classroom. I was spotting the ones that I might push a button to get them to go to graduate school. And I would encourage all of you to just set that aside. And if you think I'm crazy, or if you want to argue with me about it, you can find me. And if you want to go to graduate school, I'll be glad to talk to you about what you need to think about. Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, and that's probably another conversation concerning diversifying faculty and administrators. And I've had over the years so many conversations with faculty members about how to go about doing that. I have some thoughts, and maybe that's another piece in the future. But thank you so much, Bobby. Thank you so much, editorial board. We appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much to my family, to my brilliant wife and our children. Thank you so much for being a part of sharing a little bit of who we are today with the Chronicle and those who are watching.